Facebook is testing out a new program to limit the real-world effects of false news stories that spread on its popular messaging platform, WhatsApp. At least 24 people have reportedly been killed in mob lynchings in India this year. Their deaths were fueled by false rumors of child kidnappings and organ harvesting that spread rapidly on WhatsApp. In Brazil, WhatsApp messages spread containing false claims that a government-mandated yellow fever vaccine was dangerous, leading people to avoid a potentially life-saving treatment. Joining me now to discuss how Facebook and other tech companies are attempting to deal with these issues are CNET senior producer Dan Patterson and Jennifer Greigel, a social media expert and assistant professor of communications at Syracuse University's Newhouse School. Dan and Jennifer, thanks to both of you for being here. Dan, I want to start with you. Explain the technology to us, if you would. We know that fake news has been a problem with Facebook. Why does WhatsApp's technology make it worse on these messaging sites?
Well, on all social media platforms, just like a hammer is really good at whacking things, all social media platforms are really good at sharing information. That's what the platforms were built for. WhatsApp in particular is really good at disseminating information because it is linear or was initially designed for one-to-one or one-to-few types of communication. That seems kind of counterintuitive, but you trust those messages far more if it's a small group or if it's from a trusted friend. So this means that messages that on a platform are designed already to go viral can go viral even more and have the weight of authenticity attached to them.
Now, Jennifer, on a WhatsApp, is there a higher privacy setting? Is there end-to-end encryption on these messages?
Yeah, it's encrypted, and as Dan was saying, this was really an app that was designed for private messaging. But what we're seeing here in the ability for mobs to form, we're seeing true virality. That's not something we would expect from a private messaging group. And for me, I think it's really time for Facebook to consider limiting the private group audience even more. It's really that network effect in highly dense countries like India.
Right.
That's why this is spreading so fast. And I
so
think
you're saying when it comes to the debate between privacy over safety, we should get rid of some of this end-to-end encryption feature to allow the safety to be implemented?
Not so much the encryption piece, but the audience. So my understanding is WhatsApp groups can allow for 256 people. That doesn't feel very private. That's actually a pretty large group. So it's almost like a encrypted private group as opposed to the original intent, which was more one-to-one type messaging. So I think they need to consider, kind of reeling in that audience to stop viral spread in countries like India, where it's really densely populated.
And so, Dan, can you explain what WhatsApp is doing to sort of limit some of this?
Yeah, so Facebook, who owns WhatsApp, is limiting media messages. They're removing the share button for more than 5 users, and they're keeping those groups. So if you want to mass share a message, it can only be to a very small, limited number of people. And, if you think about what Jen just said, those groups of 250 plus, it takes one person to send it again to a group of 250 and again to 250. So the virality is kind of built into the platform in a backdoor kind of way. By limiting that to 5 people and removing that share button on media messages, and you think about that as very important. Media messages. Media is not locked down to one particular language. An image speaks all kinds of different languages. So that should, in theory, help cut down on this spread of false or fake news.
And the company did say that some countries spread more or share more than others. Apparently, India, according to the company, forwards more messages and videos and photos than any other country. Can you talk a little bit, Jennifer, to the fact that these messaging apps are incredibly important to some parts of the world that don't have total internet access yet?
Yeah, and different countries use apps differently.
Yeah.
What I thought was actually telling in that statement was that Facebook has very detailed information on how these apps are used. They knew that India, people in India forward this more than any other country. What I would like to see Facebook is also looking at things like how many people are in large WhatsApp groups, like how many people are in like 10 WhatsApp groups with 256 256 people, and are they passing it amongst lots of groups? You know, like, I want to see that type of information, because that leads to virality, network effects, and I want to see some of the information and data behind that too.
Right. Now, in terms of the pervasiveness of these messaging apps in areas of the world where the internet is newer, do you think that as the internet becomes stronger or spreads, it might lead to the diminished use of some of these messaging apps?
No, I think we're only going to see the spread of these messaging apps, in part because if you think about data providers, those are in local silos depending on the country, sometimes the state here in the West that you're in. So by using these messaging apps that use data, everything, even a text message, is just data. So these kind of circumnavigate the restrictions that some SMS providers could put. They also allow you to send things like media, they allow groups, they allow different functionality that really isn't built into the technology of text messages, of SMS.
So Jennifer, do we know why these false stories are spread? What is the psychology behind it? What's going on? It seems like a mob mentality transferred to a messaging app.
And again, so these WhatsApp groups, they're private, they're encrypted, they're functioning like closed groups where I think people think that they can share rumors and not be caught or not seen. It's very different than, say, a public Facebook group where you have to have some accountability behind what you say. And so I think it's one reason why they need to look at that audience too, to restrict it, because of that private nature.
So how will Facebook and other companies weigh the balance between the privacy that these users want and safety concerns?
Well, let's put it in this context. WhatsApp started as an encrypted one-to-one messaging application. Facebook purchased WhatsApp for the largest acquisition, not just in tech history, but in history of all time, $19.5 billion in cash and stock. So there is no incentive for any company, and I don't want to get down on Facebook, any company that invests that kind of money into a private messaging app to keep it private. Facebook needs to monetize that data, and the only way you can monetize that data is by removing some of the encryption or allowing at least some backdoors into that, especially when we hear Facebook say things like artificial intelligence is going to magic wand solve all of these problems. They need data in order to do that. Where's that data come from in WhatsApp? The messages themselves.
So, Jennifer, what would you like to see these companies do? Because clearly, as Dan points out, the economic incentive is not there. Does there need to be a legislative incentive? Do governments need to get involved?
I think we need more government oversight across the board when it comes to the social media industry, especially when it comes to Facebook Incorporated, given that, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is a primary shareholder and controller of this company, and he owns WhatsApp, Messenger, Facebook, and Instagram. So we need them really to look at Facebook specifically. And again, they're instituting new things. I think they think that they're helping with that message forward label, but they're essentially trying to figure out how to fix this issue, mob violence in India, without impacting their bottom line. And that, unfortunately, still looks like what their priority is, that bottom line, and not limiting that virality.
Well, let's hope in the short term, at least some of the public pressure will also help them address it. Jennifer, Dan, thanks to both of you for being with us today.